Hannah wheeled her cleaning cart down the long metal hallway of Nova Point Space Station. The wheels squeaked softly on the polished floor. She had been doing this same job for ages now. Every night, she cleaned the labs where alien scientists worked. Every morning, she emptied their trash bins and mopped their floors. The aliens barely looked at her. To them, she was just another human worker. Someone who did the dirty jobs that nobody else wanted to do. The blue-skinned Velkari engineers would step round her without saying a word. The tall Omnian traders would talk over her head as if she wasn't there. The bug-like Threx researchers would click their mandibles in annoyance when she interrupted there. Work to clean. Hannah didn't mind being invisible. It was safer this way. She pushed her cart into Lab 7, where Dr. Vexstar was studying star charts. The Velkari scientist had scales that shimmered under the bright lights. He didn't look up when Hannah entered. She began wiping down the counters with her cleaning cloth, moving quietly round his equipment. Stupid humans, Dr. Vexstar muttered to his assistant. They can barely fly their own cargo ships, let alone fight in space battles. His assistant, a younger Velkari named Zeph, nodded. I heard of Defense lost another patrol last week. Hegemony ships destroyed them easily. Hannah's hand tightened on her cleaning cloth, but she kept working. She had learned to stay quiet when the aliens talked about human military failures. They didn't know the truth. They didn't know that she had once commanded the finest fighter squadron in Earth's fleet. She remembered her call sign, Ghost Leader. Her pilots had called her that because she could appear and disappear in battle like a phantom. No enemy radar could track her movements. No alien pilot could predict her next move. But that was before everything went wrong. Hannah moved to the next lab, where Captain Thorne, a human cargo pilot, was arguing with an Omnian trade official. Thorne was one of the few humans on the station who had a decent job. He flew supply runs between Nova Point and the outer colonies. The hegemony is getting bolder, Thorne was saying. They attacked 3 more human settlements this month. The Omnian official, tall and thin with silver skin, waved a dismissive hand. Human settlements are poorly defended. If your people were better pilots, perhaps they would survive. Hannah scrubbed harder at the counter. She wanted to tell them that human pilots weren't weak. She wanted to tell them about the Battle of Proxima, where she had led 12 fighters against 50 hegemony ships and won. She wanted to tell them how she had saved an entire colony world with nothing but skill and courage. But she couldn't. That life was over. She finished cleaning the lab and moved onto the observation deck. This was her favorite part of the station. The huge windows showed the endless field of stars outside. Sometimes she would see Earth's sun in the distance, just a tiny point of light among billions of others. Tonight, as she cleaned the windows, Hannah allowed herself to remember. She thought about her old fighter, a sleek ship called the Phoenix. She remembered the feeling of acceleration as she dove through asteroid fields, the rush of adrenaline during combat, the pride in her squadron's faces when they returned from impossible missions. She had been the youngest pilot ever promoted to commander, the first human to defeat a hegemony battle group single-handed. Earth Defense had called her their greatest weapon against the alien invaders. Then came the mission to Kepler Station. Hannah closed her eyes, trying to push away the memories, the rescue mission that went wrong, the explosion that killed 70 civilians, the investigation that blamed her for following orders, the cover-up that destroyed her career to protect government secrets. She had been given a choice: accept a dishonorable discharge and disappear, or face a court-martial that would reveal classified information and endanger other operations. She chose exile. She chose to let the galaxy think she was dead rather than fight for her honor. So she came to Nova Point. She forged new identity papers and took the only job available to humans: cleaning. For 8 years she had scrubbed floors and emptied trash while the galaxy forgot about Ghost Leader. Sometimes she wondered if she had made the right choice. When she heard about human defeats, about colonies destroyed because Earth defense lacked skilled pilots, she felt a stab of guilt. Maybe she should have fought the charges. Maybe she should have revealed the truth, no matter the cost. But it was too late now. Commander Lehana was dead. Only the janitor remained. She finished cleaning the observation deck and looked out at the stars one more time. Somewhere out there, young human pilots were fighting and dying against impossible odds. They needed experienced leaders. They needed someone who understood how to fight the hegemony. They needed Ghost Leader, but Ghost Leader was gone forever, buried under 8 years of silence and shame. All that remained was Lehana, the invisible woman who cleaned up after aliens and tried to forget her past. She turned away from the stars and pushed her car toward the next lab, disappearing once again into the shadows where she belonged. The warning siren screamed through Nova Point Space Station like an angry beast. Red lights flashed in every corridor. Hannah was mopping the floor in Section C when the alarm started. She dropped her mop and looked up at the nearest screen. Her heart stopped. 59 ships hung in space outside the station. Big ships, dangerous ships. The triangular design was burned into her memory from 1,000 nightmares. Hegemony war vessels. Kim Taiho ran past her toward the command center. The Velkari security chief looked terrified. His blue scales were pale with fear. Hannah had never seen him move so fast. She followed him, staying in the shadows. Nobody noticed the janitor trailing behind the security chief. In the command center, chaos ruled. Aliens shouted at each other in different languages. Screens blinked with red warning messages. Report. Taiho barked as he entered the room. Park Min-ho, the human communications officer, turned from his station. His face was white as paper. Hegemony fleet, sir. 47 heavy cruisers and 12 battleships. They came out of hyperspace 10 minutes ago. Taiho's claws clicked nervously on his control panel. Our defenses. 8 fighters, sir. 2 patrol boats. That's all we have. 8 fighters against 59 warships. Hannah felt sick. It wasn't a battle. It was a massacre waiting to happen. On the main screen, the hegemony ships moved into attack formation. Hannah knew that pattern. She had seen it before at the Battle of Proxima. They would surround the station, cut off all escape routes, then destroy everything that moved. Sir, called out Lieutenant Yuki from the sensor station. They're powering up weapons. The station shuddered. The lights flickered. Everyone grabbed onto something to stay standing. Through the windows, Hannah could see bright flashes as enemy weapons hit their shields. Shields down to 60%. Someone shouted. Taiho activated the station-wide communication system. His voice echoed through every corridor and room. All personnel, this is a code red emergency. Prepare for immediate evacuation. Report to your assigned escape pods. But Hannah knew the truth. She had seen the station blueprints during her cleaning rounds. Nova Point had escape pods for maybe 2,000 people. The station held over 8,000 souls. Most of them would die. She slipped out of the command center and made her way to the maintenance tunnels. Down here, she could move through the station without being seen. The tunnels were dark and cramped, but she knew every inch of them after 8 years. She climbed up to an observation port and looked out at the enemy fleet. The ships hung in space like black daggers pointed at the station. She counted the weapon ports, studied their formation, analyzed their attack pattern. Her old training kicked in automatically. These weren't random pirates or raiders. This was a military operation, professional, organized. Deadly. The station shook again. Harder this time. Shields down to 30%. came an announcement over the speakers. Hannah closed her eyes and tried to calm her racing heart. She had faced hegemony fleets before. She knew their tactics, their weaknesses, their blind spots. But that was when she had a fighter squadron under her command. That was when she was Ghost Leader. Now she was just a janitor hiding in the dark. The evacuation alarms kept blaring. Through the tunnels, she could hear people running, crying, shouting orders, families trying to stay together, parents carrying children toward the escape pods. She crawled through a ventilation shaft to reach the hangar level. Below her, she could see the 8 defense fighters preparing to launch. The pilots looked young, too young. They climbed into their cockpits with shaking hands. Hannah recognized their fear. She had felt it herself during her first combat mission. The difference was that she had survived to learn from her mistakes. These pilots wouldn't get that chance. The hangar doors opened. Space was black beyond them, filled with enemy ships. The 8 fighters launched into certain death. Within minutes, it was over. Bright explosions lit up the darkness as the defense fighters were destroyed one by one. The pilots never had a chance against the overwhelming enemy numbers. Nova Point was defenseless now. The station rocked with another impact, stronger this time. The shields were failing. All shields down. Came the announcement. Hull breaches on decks 5 and 7. People screamed in the corridors above. Emergency teams rushed to seal the breaches, but Hannah knew it was useless. The hegemony was just playing with them now, testing their defenses. Soon they would begin the real attack. She made her way to her small quarters in the lower levels. Her hands shook as she opened her storage locker. Hidden behind her cleaning supplies was a small metal box she hadn't opened in 8 years. Inside was her old pilot's helmet, scratched and dented from countless battles. On the side was painted a small ghost symbol, her squadron badge. She held the helmet in her hands and stared at it. This piece of metal represented everything she had lost: her career, her honor, her identity. But it also represented something else. Hope. The station shook again. More screams echoed through the corridors, children crying for their parents, adults praying to whatever gods they believed in. 8,000 people were going to die unless someone did something. Hannah looked at her helmet and made a choice. Kim Tae-ho stood in the command center watching his world fall apart. The main screen showed nothing but explosions and burning metal where his fighter squadron used to be. 8 brave pilots had launched 20 minutes ago. Now they were all dead. Sir, the evacuation ships are requesting permission to launch. Park Min-ho called from his station. Tae-ho's claws scraped against his control panel. Negative. The moment they leave our shields, the hegemony will destroy them. But staying wasn't an option either. The station's shields were completely gone. Now, hull breaches were opening on every deck. They had maybe an hour before Nova Point broke apart completely. He needed a miracle. He needed a fighter pilot who could somehow hold off 59 enemy warships long enough for the civilians to escape. His fingers moved across his computer, searching through personnel files. He looked for anyone with military experience, anyone who had ever flown a combat mission. The list was depressingly short. Most of the humans on Nova Point were cargo pilots, engineers, or maintenance workers. A few had served in planetary defense forces, but none had real combat experience against the hegemony. Then he found something strange. A personnel file that was mostly blank. Lee Hannah, Janitor. Level 7 clearance. But when he dug deeper into the restricted databases, using his security chief access codes, he found something impossible. Lee Hannah, Commander, Earth Defense Force, service record classified. Status, presumed killed in action. Kepler Station incident. His hands shook as he read the file. This woman had been Earth's most decorated fighter pilot. She had single-handedly destroyed entire enemy squadrons. The Battle of Proxima, the Titan Station. Rescue, the defense of New Soul. Ghost Leader. Every pilot in the galaxy knew that name. The human who could appear and disappear in battle like a phantom. The only pilot who had never lost a dogfight against hegemony forces. And she was here. She had been here for ages, cleaning toilets and mopping floors while everyone thought she was dead. Tayo ran through the corridors, following the tracking chip in Hannah's work badge. The station shook round him as enemy weapons tore through the hole. Emergency teams rushed past him, trying to seal breaches and evacuate wounded civilians. He found her in Storage Bay 7. Sitting on a crate with her head in her hands, she still wore her janitor's uniform. But something was different about her. She held an old pilot's helmet in her lap. "Yule Hannah," he said. She looked up at him with tired eyes. She didn't seem surprised that he knew. "That person died ages ago. The galaxy thinks you're dead. But you're here. You've been here all along." Hannah stood up slowly. "I'm nobody now. Just a janitor who cleans up after people." The station rocked with another impact. Lights flickered overhead. In the distance, they could hear people screaming. "The hegemony is targeting the evacuation ships," Tayo said quietly. "My daughter is on Transport 7 with her class from the station school. 40 children. They can't launch while the enemy fleet is out there." Hannah closed her eyes. Tayo could see her hands shaking. "Every transport ship that tries to leave will be destroyed." He continued, 8,000 people are trapped here. We have no fighters left. No defenses. Nothing." "I know," she whispered. "Then you know they're all going to die unless someone does something." Hannah opened her eyes and looked at him. For a moment, he saw something flicker there. Something dangerous and powerful. Then it was gone. "I can't," she said. "I'm not that person anymore. I haven't flown a fighter in 8 years. My reflexes are gone. My skills are rusty. I just get myself killed from nothing." Another explosion. Much closer this time. The storage bay's lights went out for several seconds before the emergency power kicked in. "Transport 7 is requesting immediate evacuation," came an announcement over the speakers. "They have wounded civilians on board." Tayo felt his heart breaking. His daughter's Era was only 12 years old. She had never hurt anyone. None of those children deserved to die because adults couldn't solve their problems. "Please," he said, "I've read your file. I know what happened at Kepler Station. I know you were blamed for something that wasn't your fault. But this is different. This is a second chance." Hannah laughed bitterly. "A second chance to fail. To get more innocent people killed. A second chance to save them." The station's hull groaned under the stress of repeated impacts. Somewhere above them, bulkheads were giving way. Water pipes burst and sparks flew from damaged electrical systems. "I don't even remember how to fly anymore," Hannah said. "It's been too long. Flying is like breathing for pilots like you. It never goes away." She shook her head. "You don't understand. The last time I tried to be a hero, 70 people died. Good people. Innocent people. Their blood is on my hands, and if you don't try now, 8,000 people will die. Including 40 children who never had a chance to live their lives." Tayo activated his personal communicator. His daughter's voice filled the storage bay, crackling with static. "Daddy, are you there? We're scared. The teachers say we have to get on the ships. But we can hear the explosions outside." Hannah's face went white. She gripped her helmet tighter. "Tell her everything will be okay," Tayo said quietly. "Daddy, please help us." The transmission cut off. Hannah stood there in the flickering emergency lights, holding her old helmet. Years of hiding. 8 years of running from her past. each years of telling herself she was no longer a fighter, but children were dying above them, and she was the only one who could save them. She put on her helmet and looked at Taiho. "Where's the nearest fighter?" Hannah climbed into the cockpit of the only working fighter left on Nova Point. It was a strange ship, built by the Valkyrie, but modified for human pilots. The controls felt wrong under her fingers. The seat was too narrow. The display screens showed alien symbols she had to translate in her head. But when she powered up the engines, something inside her woke up, something that had been sleeping. For ages, the hangar doors opened to reveal space filled with enemy ships. 59 hegemony vessels hung in the darkness like black sharks waiting to feed. Their weapons were already charging, ready to destroy her the moment she left the station's protection. Hannah took a deep breath and launched immediately. Dozens of energy beams lit up the space around her. The hegemony had been waiting there, targeting computers locked onto her fighter before she had traveled 100 meters. But Hannah was no longer the broken woman who cleaned floors. She was Ghost Leader again. She dove straight down, using Nova Point's bulk as a shield. The enemy shots hit the station's hull instead of her fighter. She flew so close to the metal surface that her wingtips almost scraped against the communications. Rays, the hegemony pilots, tried to follow her, but they flew in formation. 12 ships moving as one unit, following their tactical programming. They couldn't break formation without permission from their squadron leader. Hannah smiled grimly. She remembered this weakness. Alien pilots were too disciplined, too predictable. She spotted Nova Point's waste disposal port and dove toward it. The opening was barely wide enough for her fighter, but she squeezed through just as enemy fire lit up the space behind her. For a moment, she was flying through the station's garbage disposal system. Metal debris and wastewater swirled. Down her cockpit, the hegemony pilots pulled up, and willing to follow her into such a dangerous space. Hannah emerged from the disposal port on the far side of the station, directly behind the enemy formation. Before they could react, she fired her weapons into their engines. 2 hegemony fighters exploded before they even knew she was there. The alien squadron wheeled around to face her. But she was already gone. She had spotted a field of maintenance, drones floating near the station's docking ring. The drones were simple robots designed to repair hull damage. Each one carried welding tools and small explosive charges. Most pilots would see the drones as obstacles to avoid. Hannah saw them as weapons. She flew through the drone field, using her fighter's communication system to override their programming. One by one, she turned the maintenance drones into guided missiles. She sent them flying toward the hegemony ships at maximum speed. The enemy pilots were confused. Their sensors showed dozens of small objects approaching. But they weren't missiles or fighters. They were just maintenance equipment. Their computers couldn't decide if the drones were threats or not. By the time they figured it out, it was too late. 15 drones slammed into hegemony ships and exploded. The aliens hadn't expected such a crude attack. Their shields were calibrated to stop sophisticated weapons, not flying toolboxes. 3 more enemy fighters died in balls of fire. But Hannah wasn't done. She spotted an asteroid field nearby. Chunks of rock left over from an old mining operation. The asteroids were small, but they had strong gravity fields, perfect for what she had in mind. She dove toward the largest asteroid, flying so close that her fighter's hull scraped against the rocky surface. The hegemony pilots followed, firing constantly. But Hannah was using the asteroid's gravity to change direction without using her engines. She slingshot round the rock like a stone from a catapult, coming up behind her pursuers at impossible speed. They tried to turn and follow, but their ships were bigger and heavier than hers. The asteroid's gravity caught them and pulled them toward the rocky surface. 2 hegemony fighters crashed into the asteroid. The others managed to pull away, but they were scattered and confused. This was how humans fought, Hannah realized. Not with formations and tactics and computer programs. They fought with creativity and madness and impossible moves that no alien mind could predict. She turned her fighter toward the main hegemony battle group. 40 ships still remained, including the massive battleships. Each one was 10 times larger than a tiny fighter. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy a city. But size didn't matter in space combat. Speed mattered. Surprise mattered. And humans were very good at being surprising. She flew straight at the largest battleship, her weapons firing continuously. The alien ship's shields absorbed her shots easily. But that wasn't the point. She wanted their attention. The battleship's main guns swiveled to target her. Weapons designed to destroy capital ships focused on her tiny fighter. If even one shot connected, she would be vaporized instantly. But Hannah had spent 8 years studying. This station, she knew every pipe, every cable, every structural beam. She flew straight toward Nova Point's main reactor exhaust port. The hegemony battleship fired just as she dove into the exhaust tunnel. The massive energy beam followed her into the tunnel, but the curved walls deflected it. The shot that should have killed her instead bounced down inside the station's armor plating like a ricocheting bullet. Hannah emerged from the other end of the tunnel to find the battleship directly in front of her. Its shields down while it recharged its main weapon. She fired everything she had into the ship's engine core. The battleship exploded like a small sun, taking 3 nearby cruisers with it in the blast. 35 enemy ships remained, and Hannah was just getting started. The last hegemony battleship tried to escape, its engines glowing bright as it turned away from Nova Point. But Hannah was faster. She had been hunting these ships for 2 hours now, learning their patterns, understanding their weaknesses. She dove beneath the battleship's firing arc and targeted its engine core. Her weapons were almost empty, but she had enough for one more shot. The energy beam struck true, and the massive ship exploded in a flash of white light that lit up the entire space around the station. Debris scattered among the stars. Burning metal drifted past her cockpit windows. The space around Nova Point was filled with the wreckage of 59 enemy ships. It was over. Hannah slumped back in her pilot's seat, exhausted. Her hands were shaking from adrenaline and fatigue. She had been flying for hours, using every trick she had ever learned and inventing new ones on the spot. Her fighter was damaged and barely holding together, but it had done its job. Nova Point was safe. She guided her crippled fighter back to the station's hangar. The docking bay doors opened to welcome her home. As she settled onto the landing pad, she could see people gathering. Dozens of faces pressed against the observation windows above the hangar floor. The engines powered down with a dying whine. Hannah sat in the quiet cockpit for a moment, hardly believing what had just happened. 8 years of hiding were over. 8 years of pretending to be someone else had ended the moment she put on her helmet and climbed into that fighter. She was Ghost Leader again. She was Commander Hannah again. She was herself again. The cockpit opened with a hiss of escaping air. Hannah climbed out slowly, her legs unsteady after the long battle. Her janitor's uniform was soaked with sweat. Her old pilot's helmet was cracked down one side from an explosion that had come too close. The hangar was full of people. Hundreds of them, aliens and humans, stood together, watching her in complete silence. She had saved their lives, but she didn't feel like a hero. She felt tired and old and scared. Kim Tae-ho walked toward her, his blue scales gleaming under the hangar lights. Behind him was a young Valkyrie girl with the same coloring, his daughter Zara, the one who had been on Transport 7 with the other children. Commander Hannah, Tae-ho said formally. His voice carried across the silent hangar. On behalf of Nova Point Station, I thank you for saving our lives. Hannah looked round at all the faces staring at her. She saw Dr. Vextar, the scientist who had called humans weak pilots. She saw Captain Thorne, the cargo pilot who had argued with the Onion officials. She saw dozens of people she had cleaned up after for ages, people who had never really seen her before. I'm not a commander anymore, she said quietly. I'm just a janitor. Taiho pulled out his tablet and accessed a classified file. His voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. 8 years ago, you led a rescue mission to Kepler Station. 12 million civilians were trapped there by a hegemony invasion force. You saved them all, the crowd murmured. People whispered to each other in different languages. The official report blamed you for 70 civilian casualties during the evacuation. Taiho continued. But the real files tell a different story. Those casualties were caused by government agents who sacrificed innocent people to protect secret intelligence operations. You were made into a scapegoat to hide the truth. Hannah felt her throat tighten. For ages, she had carried the guilt of those deaths, 70 faces that haunted her dreams, 70 lives she thought she had failed to save. The people who died at Kepler Station were killed by their own government's lies, Taiho said. Not by you. You saved 12 million lives that day, and today, you saved 8,000 more. Dr. Vextar stepped forward from the crowd. The Velcari scientist who had called humans weak looked ashamed. I owe you an apology. Commander, I was wrong about human pilots. I was wrong about you. Others began to speak. The Onion trade official who had dismissed human courage. The Threx researchers who had ignored her while she cleaned their labs, one by one. They acknowledged what she had done. Choi Yuna, a young human engineer who worked in the reactor section, pushed through the crowd. She was one of the few people on the station who had ever been kind to Hannah during her years as a janitor. What will you do now? Yuna asked. Will you go back to Earth? Return to military service? Hannah looked round at all the faces watching her, alien and human alike. People of dozens of different species who had found a way to live and work together. On this small station in the middle of nowhere, for ages, she had protected these people in secret. She had kept their workspaces clean and safe. She had fixed their equipment and solved their small problems without asking for recognition or reward. She had been a guardian angel they never knew they had. I think, she said slowly, I'll keep protecting people. Just maybe not from the janitor's closet. Kim Taiho smiled, showing sharp teeth. Nova Point could use a new security chief, someone with real combat experience. Hannah thought about it. A chance to start over. A chance to use her skills openly instead of hiding them. A chance to be herself again without shame or secrets, for the first time in 8 years. Hannah smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes and made her look younger. I accept, she said. The crowd erupted in cheers. Aliens and humans celebrated together, their voices echoing through the hangar. Children who had been saved by her courage laughed and clapped their hands. Hannah stood in the middle of it all. No longer invisible, no longer forgotten. She was home.